the right wing has been pushed back in 2 countries in Europe. In snap polls called in France, the left parties came up on top, pushing the far right to the 3rd place. And in the UK, the Conservatives faced the worst ever electoral defeat. But beyond these headlines, a deeper dive into the results and their context paints a different picture. While it's clear there has been resistance against the right wing, is it really a decline of the parties or their ideologies? Are there other factors at play? So in this week's Let Me Explain, I take a closer look at what the results of the elections in France and the UK mean for right-wing politics and compare it with the results of the Indian parliamentary elections. Let me explain. In both France and the UK, snap polls were called before the end of the term. Let's start with the French elections. On June 9th, the French President Emmanuel Macron called for snap polls. Macron did not need to call for elections. They were still 3 years before the term of the National Assembly ended. The right-wing bloc emerged as the single largest bloc in the European elections held in June. Passing laws had become a real headache for Macron because in the National Assembly polls held in 2022, his party was short of a majority. So he wanted to break the deadlock. The snap polls are his way of seeking a fresh mandate to deal with all these challenges. His gamble threw up mixed results with a hung parliament now. By the way, we too have taken a gamble, but a calculated one. We have done away with ads for the last few weeks on all our platforms because we want to rely only on our viewers and our readers, not any government or corporate sponsorship. So make sure that you don't let us down and become a paid TNM subscriber. Just scan this QR code or click on the link in your description. Now for a quick primer on how the French Parliament is stacked. The French Parliament has 577 members. Like India, they have 2 houses. The lower one is called the National Assembly. To form a government, a party needs at least 289 seats for a solid majority. The election happens in 2 rounds. First, they eliminate candidates who don't get at least 12.5% of the locally registered voters. If someone grabs more than half of the votes, they win right there. Round 2 is a head-to-head contest to find a clear winner. In the first round, Marine Le Pen's National Rally emerged as the single largest party. But in the second round, they've been pushed to the 3rd place. Despite the spectacular showing by National Rally, or the RN, they failed to achieve a majority. That's because in the second round, French centrist and leftist parties strategically withdrew candidates to bolster each other's candidates. What we call adjustment politics here in India. Macron's centrist ensemble and leftist NFP came together to block the National Rally. The New Popular Front, or the NFP alliance, has 4 major groups: France on Board, Communists, Socialists and Greens. And they allied with Macron's centrist ensemble. While their tactical unity proved to be effective, the question now is, can they form a government together? And can they govern together? Because all these parties ideologically differ a lot. What does the far right in France stand for? Marine Le Pen's party, RN, focuses on giving priority to native French citizens over immigrants in public welfare schemes, benefits and jobs. They say jobs, welfare, housing, school, etc. should go to French nationals before they get to foreigners. And by that, they mean immigrants. They oppose visible Islamic practices in public and are in favor of banning religious symbols like hijab in public institutions and limiting new mosque constructions. They say this will uphold France's secular values. They're also against same-sex marriage and rights to LGBTQI communities. They stand for traditional family structures and gender roles. Economically speaking, they advocate protectionist measures like high tariffs on imports to safeguard French industries. even if it could lead to trade conflicts and higher consumer costs. RN also wants France to reassess its relationship with the EU, and this could have complicated results. Just look at what happened with Brexit. While many are rejoicing the reversal of fortunes where the RN is now in the third position, take a look at these numbers before you say the right wing is completely routed. The far right tripled their number of seats, going from 89 to 142. And they also got the highest vote share, getting 37% compared to the left's 26%. So more French voters have shown their support to the right wing now than ever before. Most observers say Le Pen could make a serious bid to win presidential elections in 2027. She's tried many times before, but this time she could be a game changer. Compared to other European countries, the French presidency is powerful. The president can dissolve the parliament. While the government takes care of day-to-day affairs, the president is the ultimate authority. He can issue decrees, dictate policies, and even sack the PM. So if RA wins the French presidency in 2027, it'll have a domino effect in many parts of Europe. Right now, the far right is in power in countries like Italy, Netherlands, and Finland, but in coalition. So there are still checks and balances. But all this could very well change. Macron cannot contest again, and he doesn't have a strong second-rank leadership in his party. So Marine Le Pen stands a strong chance. Right now, many right-wing policies RA talks about are not constitutionally valid. But if they get a shot at the presidency, they could rewrite the constitution itself. So the pushback in France was definitely ideological, but the right wing is far from out of the game. In fact, they're surging. Moving to the UK now. The United Kingdom chooses members for the House of Commons across 650 constituencies. Each MP elected through a first-past-the-post system represents one constituency. An absolute majority in Parliament is 326 seats. Rishi Sunak was arguably one of the most unpopular prime ministers in recent times, and he'd hoped that with calling early elections, he may catch his political rivals off guard, including those in his own party. But going by the results, it's clearly backfired. The Conservative Party's earlier 365 seats came down to just 121. The Labour Party, led by Keir Starmer, won 421 seats. So yes, in terms of the numbers, the Conservative Party did suffer the strongest rejection in the party's history. But here's why we cannot say this was a rejection of conservatism. So far, voters who are conservative usually voted only for the Conservative Party. The split was often on the progressive side, but now the tables have turned. A significant section of conservative voters threw their weight behind a far-right party called Reform UK. Now, this party that was formed just a few years ago may have just won 5 seats, but it came second in 103 seats. In many cases, they came a close second to Labour candidates. Nigel Farage's populist Reform UK party won 14% of all votes cast. His party was born out of Brexit and has had a hard stance on issues like immigration. They also strongly opposed the lockdowns during COVID-19 pandemic. So while the Labour Party might have gotten a massive mandate, their vote share has not increased substantially. Last elections in 2019, they had a vote share of 32.1%, and now it's shot up to 33.7%. So the swing is just 1.6%. While the net outcome is that there's a Labour government, it does not mean a decisive mandate against right-wing politics. The Labour Party denied a ticket to many left-leaning leaders like Lloyd Russell and Faiza Shaheen. The new Prime Minister Keir Starmer's policies are hard to read. He's gone back and forth on many issues, like nationalising many public services. His policies look like a mixed bag of right and left-wing thinking. Starmer has been reluctant to condemn Israel's war in Gaza, and this has also cast a shadow over Labour, a party that's traditionally left-leaning. Dozens of Labour councillors have resigned from their roles over Starmer's stance on Gaza. Many on the left are skeptical whether the party truly represents a clean breakaway from the conservatives who've taken a hardline approach to immigration. And many fear that the rightward direction of the UK may continue under Starmer. It's expected that on foreign policy and economy, there may not be too many drastic changes. With English nationalism prevailing, there was no discourse around Brexit, which in a sense is a right-wing project, and the economic disasters, many of which can be linked to it, like high inflation. So the results of the UK elections are more a reflection of Rishi Sunak and his Conservative Party being highly unpopular, and of course, anti-incumbency. Sunak anyway was not an elected Prime Minister. He did not seek a mandate after coming to power either. So he faced a legitimacy crisis both within his party and with the electorate. Many observers say that in the UK, the left has transformed itself closer to conservatism, so they can appeal to a larger base. So while there has been a pushback, the left and the centrist parties are coming closer to the right in terms of ideology, much like the Congress in India. France and the UK, like in India, saw parties coming together against right-wing ideology, and the voters responded. Like in the UK, where the Labour is now more right-leaning, in India too, Congress toys with right-wing stance, especially in states like Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Maharashtra. The larger message from the electorate is also similar. The voters have made it clear that issues like unemployment, inflation matter, and not just ideology. That's it from me for this episode. Make sure that you write to me at pooja@thenewsminute.com with feedback, criticism, and even story ideas for my next episode. Meanwhile, make sure you like this video and share it with your friends and family.